Thicken up!
And on the day I was born, the nurses all gathered round, and they gazed in wide wonder.
What can I say? We tried. I think we need to try a little harder though. Hey guys, how you doing? Today we're going to be continuing our Terminator franchise series with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So Terminator 2 Judgment Day was released way back in 1991. Like the first installment, this one was also written and directed by James Cameron. But this time, after the huge success of the first Terminator film and the mega success of Aliens, he was able to produce the movie himself and the way he wanted. And again, the film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and this time Robert Patrick plays the antagonist, the T-1000. And this time we also get a squealy little girl, John Connor, played by Edward Furlong.
Help!
This does not help our mission.
Help! Get this thing off of me! Let me go! Why the hell did you do that?
Really? That's the best casting you could do? I mean, seriously? I thought you were supposed to be some kind of genius. So like the first one, a Terminator was sent from the future to the past. However, this time he was sent to not kill Sarah Connor because, well, obviously that didn't go over so well. So this time around, he was sent to kill her son John Connor before he's all grown up and becomes
Great military leader.
As I brought out in our Terminator video, James Cameron originally wanted the villain to be made of liquid metal, and Cameron reused this idea for Terminator 2. And this time he has two cyborgs going head to head, fighting each other. So between the time of the first Terminator was released in 1984 and now in 1991, after Arnie has become one of the biggest super action stars in the world, it only made sense to recast him as the protagonist. This time around, he is there to protect John Connor from the second Terminator, the T-1000. But wait a minute, guys. Since Sarah defeated the first Terminator and saved her son from dying, then doesn't that mean she also saved the future and mankind on top of that? And therefore it's over with. All said and done. Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? But as we learn in this sequel, not only was the original Terminator's arm left intact back at the robotic plant in 1984, they were able to find a microprocessor left over from the Terminator. And then you have this guy, and he uses the leftover parts to build Skynet, which in turn is what sets the robotic Judgment Day against mankind. But now wait a minute, if the future is already set, where Sarah wasn't able to stop the robotic apocalypse from the first one in the future, yet Dyson found the arm and the chip back in 1984, and in 1991 he built Skynet, then how could he, I mean, I don't, oh, my brain hurts. You know, guys, just watch the movie. Don't think about it. Don't get too logical about it. Just you know, watch the movie and enjoy it. It's a pretty good movie. But guys, as for the film, it's a brilliant idea to have cyborg versus cyborg, but Cameron still needed a villain that could go up against and still kick Arnie's butt. So James Cameron came up with a brilliant idea of making the T-1000 being made of
A mimetic polyalloy,
What the hell does that mean?
liquid metal.
which means he can morph into other people after touching them, or I guess actually after killing them first. Yeah, you're gonna have to kill them. And he can emulate their voice. He is also capable of running really, really fast. And guys, he can also turn his arms into
Knives and stabbing weapons.
Now guys, the talk of a sequel of the Terminator started immediately after the release of the Terminator back in 1984, and everyone went nuts for it. Everybody wanted to do it. You gotta have a sequel. However, there were several problems that continually held production. Most notably, one was Cameron wasn't really keen on the idea of even doing a sequel in the first place to begin with. To him, the Terminator story was told, and he liked the bleak ending that he left us with the original Terminator movie. It left it up to the viewer about what the fate of the future held. But the movie blew up, made millions of dollars, and after long negotiations, Cameron decided to do it, but only if he had 100% control. Cameron was currently working on his underwater epic, The Abyss, while he started writing the script for Terminator 2. However, he was worried about the effects needed for the liquid metal. CG effects just they were still in their infancy. They just weren't there yet. And Cameron knew the technology wasn't ready. But the thing is that these effects also had to stand the test of time. It needed to be able to live up to expectations 20, 30 years after the movie is made. And Cameron knew that. So he ended up using The Abyss as a way to create this new liquid effect. And with help with his special effects crew, Stan Winston, ILM, and others, they created this.
Bud? Oh, wait, it's okay.
25 years later, and the effects still hold up. It's crazy how well these effects hold up. So Cameron went full speed ahead and made his film. Well, of course, nothing is ever that easy. Cameron knew that this was going to cost a buttload of money, and so there was still a question of who was going to shell out the multi-million-dollar budget to finance it. Well, this became the tricky part. Gilliland Hurd ended out only buying the rights to the Terminator by name, not as a franchise, because at the time there was no prospect of a franchise. So because Hemdale financed and distributed the film, they in turn held the rights to a possible future franchise. But they still needed some extra help. Carloco Pictures were very excited for a sequel, and they shelled out $5 million to Hemdale for the rights to the franchise. James Cameron started casting. He already had Arnold Schwarzenegger on board and Linda Hamilton, and Cameron cast Billy Idol to play the T-1000. Wait, what? Billy Idol? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and gents, girls and guys. Cameron originally envisioned Billy Idol as the T-1000. He even made storyboards as him as the T-1000. Take a look. They even went so far as starting rehearsals with Billy Idol. And then James Cameron saw an early cut of Die Hard 2, which starred Robert Patrick in a villain performance. And he actually decided, you know what, guys, that's the guy. That's who I want to play the T-1000. And he kicked Billy Idol out. That must be devastating for an actor to go through that whole process. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, sorry, you're out. Bye. The entire idea of a police uniform was, well, of course, obvious. You see a policeman and you think safety, you can go to him for protection. And he also is an authority figure. I mean, guys, if a cop asks you a question, you answer it. And Cameron wanted to play on that. And when you think about it, guys, this was actually an ingenious decision to make. I mean, this is an individual where you have really no reason to fear, but yet he ends up being this ruthless serial killing machine. As for John Connor, out of hundreds of child actors, and as mentioned earlier, he cast Edward Furlong, who had absolutely no prior acting experience whatsoever, but for some reason the casting director still casted him. I mean, he's just flawless as John Connor. Next up, Joe Morton auditioned for the role of Miles Dyson, the head of Skynet, and Cameron cast him. Most of the original crew from the first Terminator jumped back on board. Multi-award-winning cinematographer Adam Greenberg, who shot the original, came back as Cameron's DP. And for you kids out there who don't know what DP stands for, it stands for Director of Photography. Also, Academy Award-winning Joseph Nimitz III came on as head production designer. Stan Winston and his crew and ILM all came back to take on the grueling, extensive task of building the special effects needed for the film. And at the time, guys, Stan Winston said that this was the most extensive, hard-set production he has ever worked on. And also, award-winning film editor Mark Goldblatt came back to edit it. Now guys, after his experience on Aliens, James Cameron didn't want to be contained on his sound stages because it just didn't feel organic, and so he wanted to film more on location. They filmed in and around California and New Mexico. For one of the greatest action scenes ever in film history, the mall scene, they got permission to film at the famous Northridge Mall, and they allowed them to film all the stunts and shootouts there, of course after business hours. I mean, guys, no one wants to be going out there shopping and suddenly having Arnie and this other dude throwing each other through walls. Well, actually, I would. That would be pretty cool to see. And a little side note, another Schwarzenegger action film, Commando, was also filmed there. However, Cyberdyne's headquarters was more difficult because the scenes contained such high amount of not just stunts and special effects, but also an extensive amount of shootouts and explosions. So Joseph Nimitz III found an industrial park in Fremont, California, which was absolutely perfect. It gave them the freedom and space they needed. Cameron again enlisted the help of his good friend Bill Wisher to help write the script and polish it up. And they completed a 140-page script in May of 1990. And by July 15th, the final script was over 180 pages. Now guys, just a really quick fun fact. When writing a script, how do you know how long a movie is going to be? In Hollywood, they consider one page to equal out to 1 minute of film. Therefore, if you have a script that's 140 pages, well, your film's going to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. Cameron's final script was 180 pages long, which means Cameron's original time frame for the film was about 3 hours. Of course, after editing and for time and pacing, all that stuff is moved around and always cut down more considerably to a more sustainable running time. So the theatrical cut of Terminator 2 ended up being 2 hours and 16 minutes. However, James Cameron's director's cut, which is the version we see today and you have to see, is 2 hours and 33 minutes. And we're going to be getting more into the differences between the theatrical version and the director's cut a little bit later. James Cameron's goal was to have the film completed for a July 4th, 1991 release date, which meant they had a 6-week turnaround time between the script and production. Production ended out spanning a whopping 171 days between October 1990 and March 1991. I mean, guys, the budget for Terminator 2 in 1990 rose from $75 million to ending around $102 million, which was the highest budget for a movie at that time. $102 million is considerable to Transformer numbers in the upper 200 millions today. So that just became a stressful situation for James Cameron, as the increasing budget and needing to find more financing in other areas, and to get the movie set and ready to release in theaters in 1991. Now guys, going back to the mall attack, there was a chase through a water drain. James Cameron got permission to film in the water drain, and the city redirected the water so they could film those scenes. However, the canal was still wet from the water, but not only that, but there was also algae and mold. Even after the crew water blasted the area down, it was still very slippery and very dangerous to perform the much needed stunts. So numerous takes needed to be done, and the scene dragged on for countless days of shooting. But they pulled it off, and it is one of the greatest action chase scenes in cinematic history. Now that brings us into the deleted scenes. There are a slew of deleted scenes. If you guys are familiar with James Cameron, you know that he typically puts out director cuts of his movies. But with Terminator 2, he put out a director's cut that has a ton of awesome deleted scenes that you guys have to see. And they're all good. They're not time wasters at all. There's this deleted scene here where the T-1000 is searching John's room to find out clues and to find out maybe where he's at. Another awesome deleted scene, really was needed in the movie, is where Sarah Connor reprograms the Terminator, reprograms his CPU chip so that he can learn naturally about how to behave more like human.
Now open the port cover. Pull to break the seal. Good. Now remove the shock damping assembly. You can now access the CPU. Do you see it?
Yes.
Hold the CPU by its base tab. Pull.
Another deleted scene that is awesome is John Connor teaches the Terminator how to smile. This just brings a smile to my face.
That's good.
Now there are other deleted scenes, a lot of them have to do with the T-1000. We see how the T-1000 got the policeman's motorcycle, and we also see around the ending how the T-1000 starting to malfunction. And then of course guys, we have the original ending.
August 29th, 1997 came and went. Nothing much happened. Michael Jackson turned 40. There was no Judgment Day. The luxury of hope was given to me by the Terminator. Because if a machine can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
Now James Cameron wanted this happier, more cheerful ending. For one, he wanted it to contrast with the darker ending of the original Terminator movie, and two, he told his story, and the story is finished, it's completed. Now this was the only time where the studio really stepped in and interfered with James Cameron's editing process. After a lot of strain from the studio, Cameron recut the movie down to 2 hours and 16 minutes, leaving almost 22 minutes on the cutting room floor. And instead of refilming a whole new, brand new ending that would take more time and money that they really didn't have, instead he decided to reuse the road footage and recorded Linda Hamilton's monologue over the road footage that we saw previously earlier in the film. And the footage was used as a new ending. But Cameron only agreed to do this if his original cut, the 2 hours and 33 minute version, would end up being released in the future on home media. The studio agreed. Cameron had zero plans for any more sequels. This was it. It's done. James Cameron's gone on record by saying that he would rather be shot in the head than to make another Terminator sequel. Terminator 2 went on to dominate and demolish box office records, becoming the highest grossing R-rated film in history. And to this day, when considering inflation, the highest grossing sci-fi movie of all time. It went on to receive 4 Academy Awards for Best Sound Design, Sound Editing, Visual Effects, Best Makeup, and was nominated for 2 awards for Best Cinematography and Film Editing. And it went on to win over 50 other awards, including a Special Achievement Award for Stan Winston and his crew in ILM for the special effects. This set the landmark for high-quality CGI effects and was the stepping stones for effects in Jurassic Park. You look at both of those movies now, over 20 years later, and the effects on Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 still completely hold up. In June 2001, the American Film Institute ranked the film at number 77 on AFI's greatest films of all time. The Terminator, as portrayed by Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2 Judgment Day, was ranked at number 48 on the list of the greatest action heroes of all time, and the T-1000, played by Robert Patrick, was rated as number 22 on the list of greatest villains of all time. And the famous quote that we all heard from Terminator 2 until today,
Hasta la vista, baby.
has been ranked as number 76 on AFI's 100 Years of 100 Movies of the Best Quotes in Film History. The film was voted as the 8th greatest sci-fi movie and also as the 8th greatest sequel of all time. Guys, this is very rare to see a sequel completely surpass the original in every way, and it did. I remember back in 1991, and no one ever saw a movie like this before. We didn't have all these heavy special effects driven superhero Transformers movies like we do today. It was highly regarded as one of the ultimate cinematic masterpieces and is used frequently in film schools as an example of a nearly perfect film. In 2014, James Cameron had announced that for the 25th anniversary, he was working on a 3D conversion edit of the movie, which was to be released in 2016, again for the 25th anniversary. Now guys, I've looked it up, and right now it's been only playing in foreign markets such as Japan before it hits the US. Sources say that it's supposed to hit the US, Canada, and the UK in late 2016. However, this is November 2016. So really the projected date is going to be in early 2017. Well, that's the end. I want to hand this video over to you, and I want to know, what did you think of Terminator 2 Judgment Day? Let me know if you saw it back in the day when it was first released. What was your experience like? And do you guys agree that this movie is one of the best sci-fi action movies of all time? So guys, leave your comments down below. Down there. It's been a lot of fun doing this Terminator series. Next up, we're going to be discussing Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. And then after that, of course, we're going to go on to Terminator Salvation. A lot of information about that between the different directors they were going to use, what the script changes, and a bunch of other stuff that happened with the movie. And then, guys, we're going to go into Terminator Genocides. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe so you can be notified of when new content and new videos like this will be up. Check out our new spotlight video of Gene Wilder. We talk about his career, his life, and so on. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the future.
Yes, officer. Is there something wrong?
Have you seen this boy?